I have picked up a few techniques, tips, little routines over the many years that I've been reading, and I want to share them with you today. Peak performance, I read 200 books nearly in 1 year. Last year, I read closer to 100. This year, I'm already slacking, but moral of the story, I love to read, and I love to read a lot. I fly through books depending on the genre, but I love romantasy, romance, even sometimes literary general fiction. I will zoom through. I listen to audiobooks. Typically, those are mystery or nonfiction or classics. I have a book club with some of my close friends, and that means 10 to 12 additional books I'm reading every year. I love my Kindle. I read so much on it. I never really read on my phone, but all of this to say, I have picked up a few techniques, tips, I don't know, little routines over the many years that I've been reading, and I want to share them with you today because I think reading is wonderful. I love that more and more people are reading. I love that my closest friends are reading more and more now. I have lent a few of them some books such as Icebreaker, Fourth Wing, the ACOTAR series, and it's just lovely to share the love of literature. So, hi and welcome. Today I'm going to change your reading life completely and tell you how you can also read many, many books if that's what you want. Because if you read at a more relaxed pace, that is completely fine. I don't. Actually, in the month of April, I only finished a single book, which is atrocious for me, for my standards. I miss reading. It's not atrocious because I didn't achieve something. I really miss reading. So, this is also a good video for me to remind myself how I read often and how I was able to read so much in the past and to get me back to doing that because that would make me very happy. I wrote notes. I come prepared because I was reflecting on how come I do read so much or did read so much and how do I actually do it? So I'm going to make this video a 5 W's situation. Who, what, where, when, how, which I never understood why they're the 5 W's when I was in school because one is an H, but nonetheless. Let's start off with who, me. I think the baseline for being able to read a lot is you have to love reading, have to be really passionate about it. Not have to, but I personally am. There are so many beautiful moments that I can recall vividly when I'm holding a book and time flies. I have had so many situations where I will finish a book in one sitting because it is that good and it just transports me into another world. And at the end of the day, that's the magic of reading, and that's what feeling I hold on to. And every new book I'm starting, I don't know, maybe that could give me that feeling. You never really know until you get into the meat of the book. I mean, I will say what comes right to mind is Jessica Hastings. Everything that woman has ever written, I'm hooked from page 1. Chapter 1, I'm locked in. I'm probably finishing it in one sitting, if not very, very shortly. So I think the who is yourself, looking at how much you love to read if you're forcing yourself. My cat keeps moving what my phone is standing on. You can see her right there. I definitely read a lot less in high school because of required reading. I have a confession to make. I don't think I've ever said this out loud. I never finished a single book for required reading. Spark Notes were my best friend. If I had AI when I was in high school, I would have ruined the world. Succeeded? I don't know, whatever you want to say. But I never read a single book. I got off by Spark Notes, and one of my really good friends did read all of them, and she would give me great synopses. Synopses. Anyway, when I finally got near the end of high school and there wasn't as much required reading, I started getting into fantasy again because I had kind of read Harry Potter when I was younger, but all that to say, I'm just naturally really passionate about reading. I love it. It makes me so happy. I love talking about it. So the who starts there. And the second part of who is also the author. Find out what works. Yes, try out different genres, different authors, because there's such a range in writing styles and dialogue and all of that. I love banter. It depends on the type of book, obviously, but find your auto-buy authors, as you so call them, because you will find reading just flies and feels so fun when you're reading content you love. naturally. So my few examples, I have so many though, but Carly Fortune comes top to mind because she just released a book and I cannot wait to read it, and I know I'll read it in one sitting, and I have a bunch of signed books by her, and I love Emily Henry. Anyway, author matters. So one, I'm passionate about reading, but two, I know the authors that I love. I do branch out. It's not that I'm staying in tunnel vision, but I know what I like, so I read more that way. And if anything, I think if you get in a role, like a rhythm of reading a lot of what you love, you'll be more inclined to branch out and try something new. And even if that doesn't work, or you get in a reading slump, or you stop reading for a while, at least you know what to go back to and get you back in that spirit. So I think it's really helpful to know what type of authors and writing style you like. I guess to wrap up the who, because this is kind of the biggest one of the W's and H, another is try starting a book club, whether it's online. I know there's the app called Fable. I used to use it a lot, and they have like online book clubs that way, and people post, and I think you read it in order together, like the different chapters. I'm really lucky that I have a book club in person with my friends. That really motivates me. It also branches out the genres I read and the types of books I read, because I would not read probably way more than everything we reread. It's fun to have everyone pick a different book, and I have read a lot, so I make it kind of hard sometimes. They'll want to read a book, but I've already read it most of the time, so we really branch out in the types of books we read, and it's just so fun to connect about like books with friends or anyone. You could probably find an in-person book club at a local bookstore or cafe or something, so I highly recommend surrounding yourself with people who love to read. It's really motivating. And the last one I'll say, like another personal anecdote, is my dad always loved reading and not imposed it, but kind of passed it down to me. I remember being younger and we would listen to an audiobook together, but he also had the printed out pages, but it was like a CD that was in Romanian, but it stuck with me. And he just always had the house full with books, and they would always buy me books. When there was like school fairs or Scholastic, I would get to buy books. I'd get an allowance of how many I could buy. We would go to the bookstore all the time, the library. It was just in my world, and so it was so much easier to pick it up young. And as I said, it did kind of stop at one point, but now it's definitely back in full swing. All that to say, I need to follow my own advice and remember how much I love it, because this right here is my stack of my TBR, since I do a TBR jar video where I pick three to five books that I want to read every month. And last month I didn't finish a single one. I started one and I almost got to the end, but then I still also picked for May. So I have a lot of books to get through, and this is giving me my motivation. Moving on to the what. It's books, but there are different formats, and I would say my favorite is a physical paperback. I love that. I want it to be floppy. I want it to just like open so easily. I crack open the spines of my books because I want it to be easy to read. I love when a book looks worn, when it looks read. I'm not one to keep them in pristine condition, but also genres, all of them. Of course, I love some romantasy. I love fantasy. I love romance. Fiction is so hard because there's literary fiction and contemporary fiction. I probably go more towards contemporary fiction, but I also love Normal People by Sally Rooney. There are a few books that have made me who I am and kind of define my taste, but they're on such a wide spectrum that I can't really tell you specifically. Also, I recently read, oh my gosh, it's a classic. Jane Eyre changed my life. I read a little bit of it physically, but most of it was on audiobook version, and I have probably never loved a classic as much, and I need to reread Pride and Prejudice because I do think for the longest time Pride and Prejudice was my favorite classic. I also really like The Picture of Dorian Gray, but I have read these over many years. I read Pride and Prejudice the first time like 8 years ago, and I do think I would now understand a lot more of it given I've read more. Clearly my vocabulary isn't showcasing all of the books I read, but the what is books, any type of books. I love a physical book. I do have my Kindle though. I actually bring it to the gym with me to read in the sauna. It did for the first time though this week tell me that it was getting too warm, and that was disappointing because I almost finished my book, but I had to put it outside. I was scared it would like blow up. Maybe I could just bring a physical book in there. Anyway, books, that's the what. Try them all out. For where I read, A big portion is here, what you're seeing right here in my bed. But I also read on my couch a lot. I try to keep my bed pretty separate in my life, as in like I sleep here so that when I get in bed at night, I'm just ready to go to bed. I just said bed 1,000 times, but you don't want to like go on your phone or work in bed too much. I'm really mindful of that because for a while I wasn't sleeping well, and now I'm in a pretty good rhythm. So I try to keep my bed very sacred and like relaxing. And sometimes I try to read on my Kindle like as I'm falling asleep or going to bed. I read maybe 1 page, 1 to 2 pages, and I'm out like a light. So reading before bed is not really my thing. We're not at the when yet though, we're still at the where. So I'd say my bed, but my couch is my primary reading location. Also, Ella, my cat, will always come either under the blanket I have or over my legs, and then I'm holding my book. Sometimes I like lean my book against her because she's so perfectly sat on my lap, and it's adorable. I love reading with her. I'll try reading in public transit situations if I don't have a long time to be, if I do have a long time to be on that metro or bus. That doesn't happen that often, to be honest. I love walking everywhere. Walking though is where I read a lot of the time because I do love audiobooks as well. Right now I'm listening to The Weight of Ink, and what my goal is to read all of the books on my physical TBR. I have a whole video about that, and there are about 100 on there. And so what I'm doing is I'm listening to audiobooks that I own the physical copy of, so that it's getting through my physical TBR even though I'm listening in another mode, which is audio. Very rarely I'll read in cafes or in public. I love to be all in my book. I also love being home. I travel quite a bit, and which I'm really grateful for, and I love seeing my friends and spending time out of the house doing things. So when I'm alone and recharging, which reading for me is a big part of that, I like to be at home. I like to feel cozy. So I'm not really one to read out and about. In the summer, maybe I'll read by the canal near me, sometimes by the pool, but honestly, I love reading at home. I could stay like a full night and just read when I have a free weeknight or weekend with no plans, like everyone's out of town or busy or something. Oh my goodness, I'm sat on my couch and reading all day. The last big one for where is actually airplanes, because I travel quite a bit for work and for pleasure. I have a lot of downtime in planes. If I'm not working, a lot of the time I end up working, but on the rare occasion the Wi-Fi doesn't work in the flight, I do read. And if I'm going on vacation for personal, so flying not to go on a work trip, I will read, and I fly through books. I remember my most recent trip, kind of just for me, was in March. We're now in May, and on the plane ride alone I finished 3 books. I was basically done the one I was bringing into the plane. I had like a few chapters left, and I finished that. I finished a whole second book, and then the third book I had read a bit of it and I decided to finish it as well. So I lock in on that flight. There's nothing else. I have my headphones on. I'm listening to background ambient music. That's another thing. I don't know when to, okay, I'll talk to you about it and how. Anyway, that's where. Now we'll get into when. Okay, when I wrote these notes, I must have been on a different planet because I said peak reading time is 7 to 8:30 a.m. Not at all. I'm at the gym at 7 to 8:30 a.m. So there's no chance I'm reading. I never read in the morning anymore, but that kind of goes to show how cyclical it is. I think in the winter when I was waking up pretty early and it was so dark out, I didn't feel motivated to go to the gym yet. So that time I would kind of go after work, or I don't know. Things change obviously as life changes. In this moment in time, I'm reading after work if I don't have plans, which doesn't happen often, or on the weekends in the day. Something I find so hard is if I want to read at lunchtime and I get into my book, I do not want to go back to work. So I actually really try to avoid that, even though my head is in peak needing a break and focus mode. So it's really productive reading, I would say, during lunch. I get so into it that I don't want to stop, and then I kind of resent going back to work. That's been an interesting one to manage because it's like I'm having so much fun reading, but then it's ruining what I have to do for the rest of the day, because unfortunately I do have to go back and work. At least I'm home most of the time, but that's, yeah, I wonder if you've experienced that, like having to go do something else. I have a few vivid, oh my gosh, when I read Normal People by Sally Rooney for the first time, I was still in school, and I remember I had to get on a call for a group project when I had like 100 pages left of this book, and I was reading it all in one night. I was so mad. I really wanted to pretend I was like sick or something, but I didn't, and I went to that freaking call. And then the second it ended, I finished the book. And that's how I am. When I get into something, I just want to go all in. So for when I read, it really depends on when I have free time, but if I have a few hours of blocked out time, I will read as much as I can, and that's my favorite thing, to just get lost in it and like no distractions. You know how I told you who, what, when, where, how? Turns out I had why in here, so that actually is the 5 W's. And how is pretty funny because it's like how you read. As a bonus, I'll just tell you both. How I read with my eyes. I did tell you earlier how, like my Kindle, my physical books, all those preferences. So for the why, because I love it, because it makes me so happy, because it gives me things to talk about, it expands my brain, it makes me think of new things, it gives me joy, it gives me ideas for how I want to improve my life, what I don't want to do in my life. Reading fills my soul in a way that no other media or entertainment has ever been able to do. And it gives me this connection to other people who read and who let their brain be taken in all these different directions and all these different journeys and expanded into new worlds and new possibilities. That sounds a little cheesy, but just when I think about reading, I could talk about it forever. And one day, one of my goals is to make someone else who's a reader feel this way by the power of my own words. So hopefully I achieve that and actually put time towards it. But that's today's video. I had so much fun just honestly talking about reading, as I always do. I am thrilled that I'm finally home for quite a good chunk of time. I'm gonna read so much. At least that's my goal. I'm gonna implement everything I just told you about in today's video. And I'm excited to just talk about amazing books, discover some new ones. I do want to reread the Off Campus series by Elle Kennedy because the show is coming out on Prime, and I'm so excited. That's another reason I love reading, because then when there's an adaptation, you get to say like, oh, I was there already. I did that. And then you can compare the book to the show or movie. So that's always really fun. But this is where I leave you. I hope you have a lovely, wonderful rest of your day, evening, night, whenever you're watching this. And don't forget to subscribe and comment below what you're currently reading. Okay, bye.